We are back on Dev Interrupted. I'm your host, Connor Bronson, and we're live from New York with another incredible guest. Welcome to the show, Maryam Jahanshahi.
Thanks, Connor. I'm excited to be here.
And I really love that you're here because we don't talk to data scientists that much. And you are not only the head of R&D and a data scientist at Datapeople, you are also a co-founder of that company.
I am a co-founder. I also work very strongly with engineers. And so I'm always up in their code and in their pull requests and all the fun side of things. I guess that's one of the things when you get to be a technical co-founder, you sort of have to run the gamut of all the different things that you do.
Yeah,
So
it was fun talking to you as we were kind of getting set up. And you mentioned you kind of had this opposite journey where you really dove into the data side. They were becoming like this strong data scientist. And then you realized you wanted to add these data engineering skills to the table.
yeah, it's an unusual experience. I think part of the reason why I had to do it was I had to figure out the systems that we needed to analyze data to kind of get a data driven product. And
Yeah.
so my role now is sort of, it is such a weird mishmash. I was talking to my co-founder about it the other day. I'm neither nor do I run engineering, nor do I run like the data side of things, but it's sort of almost technical
You're
product
the fusion between
management.
the two of them.
It's like a weird mix of many different things. And so we're realizing that, that requires a certain level of skills and different types of agility. And so it was easier for me to actually write my data pipeline than write the spec to give it to the engineers to do. So I was
Yeah.
like, yeah, this isn't so bad. So we realized very early on, like with these systems, I think increasingly as our data becomes bigger, we're going to have new classes of product managers, including like data informed product management. I'm sure things like Chat GPT are bringing that to the fore, but it's not just that. It's anything that adds a level of analytics to your dashboards and things like that. You want someone who has a business interest, but also is able to like run the SQL query to figure out what the hell went wrong with that dashboard. And so it's an interesting transition that I don't know whether I'm crazy for making it, but it's what the organization needs.
No,
So it ends up being a
I think
fun
it makes a lot
place.
of sense, right? Like if you're a data scientist today, you want to add that skill set so you can better interface with these tools that are able to extend and leverage your work.
Correct. And it's been really I taught myself Python mostly to sort of get a sense of how do we like build very reproducible processes to understand data. And then that's been a gateway drug into natural language processing, which obviously at Data People, we take career documents, whether it's resumes or job descriptions, and sort of take and extract really important structured data so we can run analyses and
Yeah.
understand the impact of things. So that's been my kind of gateway drug into things. But I sometimes read a little bit of PHP because that's what our like lovely monolith is written in. And so it ends up being, once you know one of them, you start getting a sense of
You
the
start seeing the
others.
patterns.
Yeah, you
Yeah.
start seeing patterns. I did not ever imagine myself as someone who could code or code competently, but it's kind of you find your ways. Because I think when you have a question that you want to answer and there aren't any other ways of addressing that question, you sort of are like, okay, let's have at it with all these different tools. And it's been a really great system. So
Is that a mindset that shifted for you over your time at Data People? It's now been what, 7 years since you founded the company?
it's been 7 years. And finding the right tool and deciding on the architecture for those tools has been really important. I'm now starting to get a better sense of how systems are put together, and kind of going end to end from the like germ of an idea that you have to like we're building out a second product right now.
Oh,
And
that's
that's been
exciting.
an interesting time because the things that fuel the first product might not work with the second product. And
Yeah.
so just splitting off, infrastructure into a very different systems just needs to happen. So that part of it is something that honestly, a couple of years ago, if someone had told me I'd have to like run things on AWS, I'd just be like, no, thank you. You guys keep it. I'm going to stay with my lovely statistics. But you get excited because you're like, this can change the nature of how we do recruiting. It helps teams do things in ways that are just so un terribly manual that like it just feels like I can imagine how engineers really enjoy that process because you set up a system and you kind of let it go and you see what people do with it. And
Yeah.
that's amazing.
So I'm very curious about what you're seeing in that data. Obviously, you now have this data engineering role where you're kind of bridging the gap between data science and engineering.
Yeah.
What are the trends that you've seen in your time at Data People, and what are some of the big takeaways?
One of the things that's been really, so I hate to be the scientist who said, "Oh, I told you guys so." But one of the things that's been very exciting in the last year is that, we've been talking about things like title inflation for a long time. So an inflated title is when the job description doesn't match the title. So, you have principal engineers who have job descriptions that are only asking for 2 years worth of experience. That's kind
Principal
of,
engineers, cover your ears.
well, I hope that they've all got more than 2 years worth of experience. But we've seen that trend. We were annotating it, noticing it, and in the last year, it's kind of gone through crazy uptick. Like, that's tied to the labor market. It's tied to companies trying to, lure and attract candidates because it's really hard to hire in tech. So that's been something nice to see. I know I had a conference talk about it like 5 years ago or something where I was like, this is a thing. And people were like, what are you talking about? And now I'm so
You're
excited
like,
when I
look
get
at
to
the
see
data.
it's in tweets and
Yeah.
people are like reliking those tweets and we're very excited. So it's actually that part of it's been really fun. We're not the first to have thought of title inflation. Obviously, it's not our term, but it is something that we've been studying because we know that it has impacts. And now we have the data to show that, look, it doesn't matter what type of organization you are, whether you're a tech or a non-tech company, you've still got the same problem where at some point, like I like to think of that there is no free lunch, right? Like you
Mhm.
can give someone an inflated title. If you don't give them the pay that goes with it or the responsibilities that go with it, they will eventually leave your company or they'll go somewhere where they will get that. That's been the lesson, is being transparent and clear with candidates, with your employees is really important to having a well-functioning organization. And we just try and write software that helps people, get there, to helps humans sort of
Yeah.
communicate, which is wild.
It's amazing how challenging that can be, right?
One of the things we think a lot about is like people don't love confrontation. Obviously, when you're collaborating with someone, having those hard conversations can be really difficult. And it can be really easy to be like, here's a system and it's making us do this thing and we have to abide by it. It's much easier to blame a system than to like blame the fact that you two are going into a system, into a conversation with very different intentions. And so that alignment that happens
Mm.
in hiring processes really has to happen very early on. But it's the same thing when you're working as well. Like you need to be aligned with your manager about where you're going. You might have slightly different goals, but if you're over here and the manager's over there, you've got to somehow get together. So basically, yeah, it's not fun having systems that like force people to do things. It's much better to like facilitate that conversation
Yeah.
and to come to a compromise. But yeah, we deal with those systems all the time.
I'm curious to dive a bit more into the title inflation piece. Have you seen any impacts from the recent waves of tech layoffs? A bit of, I guess, deflation of that title bump, or is it still continuing apace?
We haven't yet seen the effects of that on the market.
Too early.
Yeah, it's
Yeah.
too early. I think it's going to be really interesting. So in certain cases, we saw historically that deflated titles were really attractive to people of certain backgrounds, like especially if you don't have, for instance, an engineering degree, like being called a junior software engineer was like quite attractive to some folks that people like wouldn't think of. And it might actually be helpful for people's efforts to like
Interesting.
try both, especially if people are trying to ensure that they have like a representative candidate pools and things like that. We haven't yet seen it. I'm kind of curious to see how it's going to play out. Anecdotally, in our case, we're hiring a VP of Eng right now, which is very exciting. And the kinds of candidates that we're seeing in the pipeline, like very senior SVPs at different organizations, were not things we've seen for many, many years. And I'm
Yeah.
sure we're not the only ones, but this is a weird market right now to be in. So,
We've had some similar experiences, I'll say, in the recruitment I've been involved
yeah,
in. So I'm very curious to see how that are kind of like anecdotal
yeah.
observations bear out in the data over that time.
Correct. And I
Are,
think like it's somewhat also restricted to the US. We've been tracking labor market developments. We do because obviously it's related to our product in different locations, and Europe has seen less of it, but Europe is also now seeing what the US has seen for the last year, which was labor market tightness. So it's going to be interesting, especially big companies that have like multiple places. How are they going to distribute work if you've got like more candidates in one place and less in others? But like the US costs more. So it's kind of,
outside of title inflation, are you seeing any other major trends in the data?
we're seeing quite a few. Our biggest trend that we're seeing right now is job descriptions are becoming incredibly long, which is fascinating from a natural language processing search process. Because, with algorithms like TF-IDF or other forms of normalizing, right? If you have a very long document that's got a lot of non-specific language versus a very short document that's quite tight, which one's going to do well on search? Which is a lot of companies can talk about their search things, but basically it comes down to some level of normalization over length. So we're seeing that length and a lot of companies talking about their values and their job descriptions, like coming back to there's a big push about culture and values that's happening. I don't know how that's going to pan out. We have these discussions a lot, and some of the stuff is coming out because of pay transparency. So in Washington state, the regulations require you to disclose exactly how many days of leave you'll have or any non-comp benefits that are like meaningful. And so that's changing the nature of job descriptions. What I'm super curious about figuring out is what's happening to candidate pools and things like that. People are
Yeah.
talking a lot about you'll have multiple locations and things like that. But that's that's the big trend that I'm sort of curious about. It's not the inclusion of salary, but how does a lot of actually job seekers are like, I don't believe the salary that's in the job description, which is sort of
That's
interesting.
intriguing.
Or is the salary above or below like the median? So can salary act as an attractant? Like, do you trust that as a signal? Because there's this a new era of transparency, I think, that's happening in job descriptions. So
It is fascinating. I'll say I'm a Washington State local
yeah,
and I
yeah.
work
So you're
remote,
aware.
but I see it when, I'm getting the LinkedIn sponsored posts of like,
Yeah,
oh,
yeah.
apply to this job. It's been really intriguing to see that trend change where suddenly now there's a lot more upfront information. I'm also seeing, I'll say, like very broad ranges
Oh yeah,
where
90 to 900,000.
yes. And
And
I'm
you're
like,
like, how? So I've spoken to HR leaders at organizations where they've got their tech companies. So they have this sort of thing. And they're very worried about being litigated. And so they're like,
mm,
if we give them the possibility of range based on historics, including a lot of other information, then we won't get sued. And they don't want to get sued. So they're very afraid of that.
it's understandable. Washington State Attorney General Bob Ferguson is very willing to enforce
It
regulations.
is, but on the other side of things, you're like you're not in the spirit of the law, and I think in Oregon and in New York, they've been sort of. I think you see the ranges are much narrower because they're like it's in your best estimate. So if you hire someone at a different level, a slightly
Mm,
higher level, you won't get penalized because it was your best effort. And you're like, it was an L6 versus an L7. But in Washington state, it's not, they haven't been explicit and they haven't gone through
probably
that
some
whole cycle.
regulatory clarity they need to bring to that.
They do.
So
And I think you'll see that pan out in the next year and hopefully that will add clarity. But it's amazing because one of my teammates, she used to be a teacher for a long time. She's a linguist on our team. And she's like, this whole thing, we have complete clarity in every other profession. Like she's like, her parents sort of work in warehouses and production roles and salary transparency has been part of that industry
a
for the
long
longest
time.
while.
Yeah.
She knew what her colleagues were making at her school as well. And she's like, you knew what you needed to do to get to that next stage. So she was like, this is wild that there's so much angst because it's fine. It's a big change, but it hasn't fundamentally changed other industries that much.
Mhm.
Like the things that people were afraid of haven't yet happened. So yeah, that's been an interesting intersection where we've seen like things change in the last year that I never thought I was just amazed when it got signed in California because I was like, well, that's going to change things for a lot of big tech companies
Yeah.
all of a sudden. And they also have to report to the government what their gender statistics are in terms of say salary and levels and things like that, which is the other part of that requirement that I don't think anyone's yet dealt with.
Really talking about too much.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But people have been doing that in Europe for years.
It'll
So
happen.
it'll
Yeah.
hamme
This is fascinating.
Sorry.
No,
I'm like, I get super geeky and
no,
excited
I
about
want to
this
know more
because
trends. I'm like, what else is happening?
what else is happening? So we have titles, we have
For folks
um
listening, I've gone entirely off script. We had an outline. We're talking about these things. I'm like, no, this is so fascinating.
um what what else have we been thinking about recently? I'm just trying to think of stuff that I've talked to our customers about because we have these conversations with customers to talk about what's happening in their stack, how are they changing? Because these are recruiting teams at many companies. They've kind of gone through significant layoffs because if they're not
It's challenging
hiring,
economic
they're
times.
not going to be dealing with that side of it. So I think the other thing that's really interesting in the our field that hasn't yet happened everywhere else. And it's sort of like, I think of recruiting as where marketing was like 15 years ago, where
Mm,
it's wild to me that the US, I think, spends $17 billion on executive search every year. Like, that's the size of that market, where it's like a headhunter reaching out to someone. And it's not just like senior level roles where that's happening. That's happened in junior level software engineer roles. The
totally.
cost of like getting interns is sometimes more than the amount that you'll pay the interns in terms of
Gosh.
not acquisition, but like, you'll
Yeah.
advertise in places. And I think what I think is a really exciting trend is, unfortunately, caused by the economic situation, people need to be able to talk about efficiencies in the process.
Mhm.
And that's where their focus is. And so that's causing recruiting to sort of be like, what are the costs of all of our channels and which ones are actually doing well for us? It's becoming a lot more data driven than it's been in the past. And so what I love about recruiters is that they're like, our hiring managers, our engineers, they want us only to advertise on like Stack Overflow or GitHub jobs, but we don't get any applicants from
Yeah.
there. They've been like, we want to know about niche job boards because we want to go back to the people and say, this is the evidence, this is the cost. Like, we could pay a candidate $100 per candidate and it'd be cheaper than advertising on those
Wow.
platforms. And that's wild to me that you could pay to get so little and have no visibility
Just
into
start
that
applying
process.
more. What am I doing?
Yeah, I know. Like, I'm like, if you just put our Craigslist ads for applications, it might actually be cheaper. So I mean, I think there's a reckoning because this whole field has kind of got to go through that sense of like, what's the cost of not a cost of a candidate, but like, how do we get to more candidates more efficiently?
Candidate acquisition costs. We can just say CAC again instead of
We
customer
could say
acquisition
CAC
costs.
again,
Yeah.
and it's like, what's their lifetime value? Like, we haven't
Yeah.
kind of gotten to that level of
Okay, that's
sophistication.
next. Yeah.
But I think it's an intuitive step. I think one thing that I am always amazed by, though, even though marketing has had this idea for a long time, is that their stacks are as bloated as everyone else's. Like, it's like I hear of so many point solutions that do this thing to this tiny little step, but they don't take you the full way around. Like, our marketing stack is as bloated as anyone else's. And that's an area where I think recruiters can be a little bit, or recruiting teams can be a little bit more efficient.
Mm.
The other thing that's actually really interesting, this is the other trend that I think is that impacts candidates less, but it's actually fascinating. So business systems, if anyone's ever dealt with an ERP, an SAP, a Workday, or whatever else, I would call them user hostile systems, like, really frankly. And they are horrible to navigate, and they don't invite collaboration, right? Like, you have your Workday person to make Workday a little bit more pleasant to deal with. And it's just amazing to me that you hire someone in your company to like create this like layer in the system that is just, I don't know if you've had
I
experiences
mean, we
with these
hire
things.
Salesforce engineers.
Right, exactly. Salesforce engineers, like HubSpot administrators, like it's
Yeah.
like this whole like, for me, the idea that those softwares need someone in-house, because this tells you a little bit about, like, I come from academia. We don't normally, like, everything is self-service there. So the fact that you have in-house people that are experts in this one thing is amazing to me. And that we call it still a service, because I'm like, it's kind of a bit of both.
We have to hire someone to manage the service.
Yeah, and like
And like,
maintain
okay,
it.
at scale, sure. Like,
Sure, but like it's a tense thing. So these are user hostile systems, and you generally don't want everyone in them, right? You want to train a group of people who can deal with this user hostile system so that your hiring managers don't have to touch it.
mm,
They can sort of have the experience with the candidate. And what we're seeing recently is that this is a collaborative process. And the more that we make these systems collaborative and able to be interacted with together, the better that like deals with that alignment issue. That you don't have someone putting some set of things into the system where the other person is like, you get to an offer stage of the candidate and the hiring manager's like, who the hell is this person? What are you doing? Like, based on what? Like, bringing them, having systems of collaboration. I think Google Docs did an amazing thing for and like
no
the Google,
question.
like that whole industry has done an amazing thing for collaboration. We have that in any of those, like, can you imagine doing that in Workday or Salesforce or any of these systems? Like, that's where I think the next generation of like business software has to come, whether that is within Salesforce as like an experience layer, or whether it's like, hey, I'm going to burn Salesforce down and build you this new thing that allows you to collaborate and interact in a way that's like part of the system will be different. So I think we're seeing that trend in terms of, for us, we integrate with a lot of application tracking systems. So things like Workday, Greenhouse, Lever, for those of you who are in startup land. And like they're getting a little bit, they're better than what the previous generation were. But I think there's another generation that will have a much more consumer focus to that business software. And I think bringing people into that process is going to make those processes better rather than being like, here, recruiter, you deal with your little sandpit and I'll deal with mine. And then we'll
Yeah,
collaborate over Outlook or Google Meets or whatever, like as in whatever your messaging system is.
totally. How
So,
are you applying machine learning to this massive data set you have? Because I'm super curious to see what insights that's generating and how it's fueling your product innovation.
so we use language models in a couple of different ways. One is to sort of extract entities. We've been training that, for instance, to pull out salaries from job descriptions. Part of that is because we want to tell companies, our customers, if they're not compliant with that legislation. And that's been actually really
Oh,
fascinating.
that's an awesome tool to have.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
So, but we've been doing that for like ever since the salary legislation came out, we were like, yep, we should be capturing this and trying to surface this up. And that's been really an interesting experience. The other area where we use machine learning is, we extract a lot of features. Our features are not unsupervised. So we do have some supervision because we think that things like tidal inflation are really subtle things that like make
Fair.
sense to a human that
Fair.
are hard to do that. But what we then do is throw it all into a model and sort of say, okay, what are the things that are like most correlating with success in this process? What are trends that we're seeing, which I think has been a fascinating side of it. Like, so a really good example is we published a tech hiring report last year, at the start of last year, talking about how skills and qualifications and even titles in different tech jobs have changed over the last couple of years, and like how we're seeing specializations develop in certain types of roles. So companies are less likely to talk about, certainly more startups are less likely to talk about software engineer. They'll be talking about a front end engineer or a
Right.
Vue.js engineer versus like a back end engineer, and being kind of specific about the subtypes. That's definitely happening. So like we're seeing, I guess I wouldn't call it maturation, but it does feel like it's like, I think in biology terms. So like you start with an embryo, you end up with you got
Okay.
your hand, right, which is like full of very differentiated cells. And we're getting to that level in some fields within tech where we've got that level of specificity. And others are still nascent, they're still growing. So, more companies are adopting things like analytics engineers than they used to be. It was a
Right.
very startup thing to have. But I think now people are less likely to be BI engineers, more likely to be analytics engineers. They're different jobs,
Hmm.
actually. But
Yeah.
it's interesting to see that rise. What was the sort of subset that we saw a couple of years ago, very handful of companies had, where it's now like, you don't have an analytics engineer. What are you doing? Like, of course you need this person
Are
who
you going to do an
manages
update
it.
to that report this year?
Yeah, I was actually thinking of doing it. It was actually a lot of fun to generate. So, and it was funny because we did do an update at one point, a small one for like a Business Insider article. And
Yeah.
what was amazing was whenever you haven't touched infrastructure in ages, you think you're like, it could take 5 hours, it could take 5 weeks. I don't know
Yes.
which of
Yes.
these it
Yes.
will be. It was 5 hours. We have a great
That's
engineer and it
great.
ran really well and it didn't break. And I was just like, I don't know how well we engineered this, but he did a phenomenal job. So yeah, we will, because we're like, yep, we've got a whole lot more data to kind of look at. We specifically focus on like companies, not nonprofits and like education
Yeah.
and defense organizations, which are just their own, like they need
Kettle
their
of
own
fish. Yeah.
report.
Yeah.
I don't know how much they change as much as companies do, but it's
Yeah.
been something that we've been fascinated by. But also to look at the difference between tech and non-tech. One of the things that I was amazed by, I just ran this report the other day, 50% of, so tech companies, so, your Microsofts, your whatever they're called now, they're not called Fang anymore. What are they called?
Oh, I don't know the
Matt,
new
Fat
term.
Man, whatever.
Something. Yeah.
Those companies don't account for that much. Like they do account for a lot of jobs, but not as many as you would think. And a
Hmm.
lot of the hiring that's still going on is in
Startup
non-tech
land
companies,
or
startups, but also like big companies that are like not where you would imagine.
so
Like you're
like
like,
a Capital One that wouldn't be defined probably as a tech company, but is
definitely
hiring a
not.
lot of engineers
Yeah,
maybe. Just
exactly.
as an example. I
Yeah,
have
so
no idea what they
they're
are.
like, no,
Yeah.
exactly. It's like the people who like might be tech might be 10% of their jobs, but they're actually 50% of the US economy's tech jobs. And so they are underrepresented in our mind space because
Totally.
everyone thinks of tech companies. And I think like, as someone who's worked in a company that's recruited engineers, and you're like so grateful to suddenly have like the ability to hire engineers and every one of them is amazing. It can be really fun to work in those companies because you're like, you can be a huge pace setter. You could do things for teams that like couldn't even imagine that it could be done. And because they've had such a tight labor market, it's been so difficult for
Yeah.
many companies to recruit. And so it can be really impactful work. And so I
Hmm.
think that's been an interesting switch. And those companies are hiring. They're hiring now. They don't seem as perturbed by layoffs. They didn't overhire or stockpile people or do all of the
Yeah.
anti-competitive things that, we know that some tech
Certain
companies
companies
did.
did. Yeah.
I say this as someone who's just like, yeah, it was difficult for us to hire. I'm sure it was difficult for
Totally.
you as well.
Well, one, I'll say, whenever you get that report done and when it's published, we would love to link in the show notes. I think it'd
100%.
be a fascinating. I'd love to kind of keep diving into that machine learning AI
Yeah.
nexus because I know, I mean, we've all seen the trends. I'm sure it's showing up in the job postings too of like AI engineers. How are you leveraging AI? What are we doing next? How are you seeing AI show up in both your product and
Yeah.
how you're leveraging it or plan to, and then also in job trends?
So I personally struggle with the blank page problem. When I'm writing anything, I find it so much easier to have started even with a very crappy draft of something that I
I
don't want to write.
agree. Yeah.
But job descriptions are the one place where I think I often go in being like, these are the three core skills and probably the title. Let me research, figure out what's kind of similar. And I've had to do this actually kind of like last week because I was hiring a new position. And I was like, what do other companies call it and things
Mm.
like that. So we haven't found the need for those sorts of technologies, or we haven't found them to be as helpful because part of what we've seen when we've applied them, we've experimented for sure, is that you get the average. And the average might sometimes be helpful for you in terms of like, that's good. But most of the companies that work with us, they're like, I don't want to be average. I want to be in the top 10%. Like,
Right.
and so it's a very different sort of kettle of fish. The other thing that we have to deal with in terms of job descriptions is there's a lot of template stuff that like, your employer brand team wants to manage. And your own like recruiters want to talk about like, for instance, your the perks and benefits that you offer, which are really important for candidates. And so your contribution is so little, like it is literally a paragraph. So we don't have as much to do there. But I've used it certainly to generate training data to
Right.
see, like, to sort of act as adversarial networks to some of our systems because I've been curious how it works. We use it to respond to questions that we would be wanting to ask someone in the recruiting process to see what would be the chat GPT response. And can I distinguish, like, is my question a good
Ah,
one or a bad one?
yeah.
I think it's got a lot of very interesting things there. I think other companies that do more in the sourcing side of things. So sourcing is when a recruiter or a hiring manager reaches out to a candidate. They've done some experiments with that apparently are pretty successful in terms of getting a
Fascinating.
very specific response rate. But I don't know if you watched the South Park episode, but I'm like, South Park literally wrote an episode with ChatGPT about
I haven't
ChatGPT.
watched it yet. I need
Oh,
to.
it's really funny, but it's like it makes you wonder like how much humans are going to just be the like process for distributing like a
We're just
lot.
the interface for it.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. Like it's like
Yeah.
at a certain point you start doubting your humanity. So it's a really interesting sort of
I mean, we can get into
piece.
simulation stuff if we need to, but I feel like I need a drink and another hour for that.
And so yeah, it's been one of those areas where we use it in very specific terms because we're dealing with hiring data. We need to make sure that like as a data product, the suggestions that we're making are driven by data that we can interpret it, that we can explain to someone why it happens and why it exists and why it's important. So something like tidal inflation. And we also know that like we've got to manage the tension with other stakeholders and like trying to make it so that like it's clear to them why that is. Because usually it's not the person who's using our system that's curious about it. It's like the person who's the next
Mm,
one over.
yeah.
So yeah, being the interface of collaboration and like education has been really interesting. It's something that I do not feel like I'm at all like as a startup founder, you suddenly are like, I have to do just whatever like I need to do, but I'm like, I'm not an educator. I teach, but I'm not a great teacher. So there's a lot to be done there that I think is really interesting.
Yeah, that upskilling piece is huge for a lot of companies, particularly as you try to, I mean, get more efficient, as you mentioned.
Yeah.
How can you get more out of your current team if you're constrained in hiring resources, something else?
Yeah.
And I know that's a challenge for a lot of companies. I want to zero in on something you mentioned about being a founder and some of the skills you've developed beyond, diving into data engineering
Yeah.
and really like learning that side. What are other skills that you've developed as a founder in the last 7 years?
So, a skill that I'm working on developing is storytelling. And I think I'm able to tell
Mm,
stories, data storytelling, but we've got to tell the stories of our company a little bit better. And it was one thing that we didn't appreciate as much when we were smaller because, we'd have people would tell you, well, you need a position. And I'm like, I don't know what that
what
means.
does that mean? Yeah.
It sounds like gobbledygook to me. And then I suddenly start understanding that, like the thing that you set up at the start constrains the decisions that you make, which is actually a really good thing. So there was a talk earlier today who was talking about saying no more than saying yes. And that's like one of the things that when you've got that clarity of vision and you've said that this is what our company does and it's really good at it and we're not going to do these other things, that's really important. So that's one of the areas where I think from a storytelling perspective, I've got to get better.
Well, you're practicing on a podcast. This is great.
I love like it's time and effort and it takes a lot to sort of get there. I think the other thing that it sort of relates to is defining what type of company we are, which I think is kind of correlated to that, but it's also a little bit different. Also, it tells you what you can and can't do or will and won't do. And we're in this weird, bizarre place as a company, a Series A company. We raised our round a few months ago, thankfully.
Congratulations.
Thank you. We are in a good but bizarre place. We have customers pulling product out of us and they want to pay us. They're like, we want to switch over.
That's great.
It's great, except most companies wait until Series B to do the second product because you sort of need another, like the organizational cost of a second product is not something, it's not just that you develop it and you've
Yes.
got to, you're like, coding is the easy part of it. It's the selling of it. It's the like training all the
Is
team
it a
on
new
it.
persona? How does it get rolled out within our go-to-market motion? How are we
100%.
marketing it? What's the story?
What's the
Yeah.
story?
Yeah.
Exactly. But also like who's gonna like do we have the same salespeople working both products?
Oh,
Do you have
totally.
them differently? Do we have different ICPs for the products? Like it
How's
is
customer
just
success going to serve it?
correct. So it's like, do you split your like that's why people don't do it at early stages because it's like it splits your organization in two and you don't feel like you've got enough scale to develop. So that's one of the areas where like we think a lot about. We're very fortunate to have customers who are just like we want to develop within this way, and that there's been some. It's not like they've got 20 different ideas that they're all like different options. It's like there is a strength to that signal. So they're very fortunate, but I'm very worried as an organization. Like, how do we do this
It's scary.
sustainably?
Yeah.
And I'm like, I was talking to a candidate the other day and he was like, what do you think is the biggest risk of your organization? I'm like, the
Ooh.
second product is the biggest risk. It's both the biggest opportunity because we're seeing a lot out of it. And it's wild to me because I got an MVP out and then we sold 2 customers de novo, not existing ones. And so I was like, biggest risk, but also biggest
Yeah.
opportunity. And we have to manage that balance. So as a founder, even though I'm very excited to see this product, I'm so excited to see like users keep going back into it and using it, which was the first time I'd seen it. And I was like, I didn't want to look at the data initially because I was like, it's episodic use case, no one will use it. And then you're like, they're coming back every week. This is kind of
Oh,
exciting.
hey.
So we're in a fortunate position, but you have to make big decisions sometimes about what you want to invest in and how. So
I'm excited to hear later. We'll have you back
yeah,
anyway
yeah,
too about how that product design journey with these design partners goes and where you're at. But I think now is a great opportunity to dig into some of that advice for founders, maybe who are in the seed or Series A stage.
yeah.
You've been there. You've like grown these skills. You've grown this company now to a successful Series B raise. You're going multi-product. What advice would you have for founders or would-be founders who are either just starting to think about like, okay, I have an idea, or I'm starting to raise, or I'm pre-product market fit? And in particular, I'm wondering about your lens as someone who has multiple co-founders.
So one of the things that we found, we built a product. We probably overbuilt it at the time because no one would. So we've always been a little bit of the big kid at the kids table, right? It's been an interesting journey. We don't come from conventional tech backgrounds. So we've always had to prove with data, maybe too much data, that we can do the thing that we're doing because none of us came from Stanford. We didn't go to MIT. Like we don't have any of the credentials anyone should have. And we're not young. So it's every single bias is kind of working against us. So maybe that was internalized as well. So we built, we got customers. And what was surprising to us was there was such a breadth of customers that we could sell to. And I think that was an interesting and important lesson because a lot of our competitors right now sold only to tech companies. And so if you have product that goes like that has diversity of customers, it'll break the brains of your marketing and sales team. But in
Yeah.
downturns like this, right, where you are buttressed a little bit because a lot of our other companies in our space ended up having to lay off like half their teams.
Wow.
We don't have that. We have some tech customers, but we don't have only tech customers. We have, it's just wild to me that we have customers that are like 17 people startups, and they are also companies that are 70,000 people, employees who've been around for hundreds of years. Like that sort of set of things is wild to me. So having that diversity has been really helpful going after that diversity, because I think a lot of companies right now in this particular financial crisis, if you're too exposed to tech, you end up really exposed and it becomes existential. For us, it's just a matter of, okay, well, we were hoping 3x growth is now going to be scaled back a little bit, but it's still a multiple of growth that we're aiming for, right? Which is different.
How do you land those first lighthouse customers in a new vertical? Let's say maybe you started with tech companies
Yeah.
and you're like, hey, I know I want to get into healthcare or financial services, something like that. How do you go out and kind of get that first lighthouse customer?
So we did a terrible, terrible thing, which I wouldn't recommend.
Okay.
But
So this is the opposite of advice. Let's be clear.
opposite of advice,
Yeah.
but it can work.
It's a warning.
We didn't. So we are now just building an outbound sales motion. We were very much a strong inbound sales
Yeah.
sort of company, which meant that we got who it opens you up, right? You don't have individual areas where we're seeing huge concentrations, but that gives you diversity. So we built a lot of collateral, whether that's marketing collateral, we were trying to sort of get that in through marketing. This is changing now because I think we have now, it's distracting our organization. If our sales team, for instance, on one hand is dealing with a nonprofit in West Africa, of which we have a customer, and then in the next thing is talking to a really big industrials company that serves your food, like ConAgra, they're dealing with fundamentally different
Totally.
problems, and it's hard for them to sort of get depth. And so that's been the thing that I wouldn't recommend, but it also did buttress us from this level of growth because it's very tempting to go after tech companies.
I think there are pros and cons there to discuss, right? Where it's maybe if you lean into a certain vertical, you can grow a little quicker on something, but you create this rigidity and this weakness potentially when times are tough. And so it's an interesting discussion to have. What other learnings have you had as a founder that maybe are a little less common in your opinion, or are things that you think are really important to drive home?
The hardest thing to remind yourself is the first few months when you have no customers and no one knocking down your door. At the time, it feels like things aren't moving fast enough. And it's those were the critical times in which we actually defined our thought processes about what we think about our industry, how we think we should build product. We actually, funny story, before we got funded from external VC, we applied to the NSF's, the Small Business.
Small
grant.
business administrations.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So they have grants. It's called America's Seed Fund.
Yep.
And didn't win them, but those proposals were so helpful for aligning our team.
Help shape you.
And
Yeah.
I still look at them now and I'm they still reflect, and we had to have debates about that because it's 6 pages and you kind of have to get everything in there. And it forced a level of alignment that I think we paid, we got the dividends off for many years. So writing is a superpower. I am terrible at writing, but I think that was instructive because we had to have debates about things that maybe weren't comfortable or the extent of things that we'll build but won't build, and that forced those discussions. So don't necessarily go after the NSF and throw, like, as in have those conversations, but I think having a very short pitch proposal in terms of what you're writing is a superpower that every founder, I think, needs to develop, especially when you work in remote environments where you have to sort of transfer a lot of information to people through written text. That was really helpful for
That
us.
distillation process.
Yeah, and just refining it. And I'm like, I remember at one point saying to my co-founders, I'm like, we should do that again. And they're like, are you nuts? We're too busy. Like, and it's like, yeah, we go back into a cave and it's just us in a cave. But like now we have amazing teams and you want to involve them in the process. But part of what I love is that I can refer back to this and be like, look, thought about this in these ways. And it's
Yeah.
funny now when you look at those because you're like, oh, this is so cringe. In some of the tech stuff that we were suggesting at the time, because it was like years and years ago, you're like, oh, that got solved, or like it's still a intractable problem. Like matching resumes to job descriptions is a really hard problem, and we thought we had this great solution, and maybe we do, but it was a really interesting kind of experience that I would recommend, whether that's for a VC pitch or like to share with other people, especially as early founders. I think that was really helpful for us.
Thank you for these insights, Maryam. I've thoroughly enjoyed this
I
conversation.
had a lot of fun too. Thank you, Connor.
Do you have any closing thoughts you want to share?
I think bored you senseless with all
No,
the
very much the opposite. So thank you for coming on Dev Interrupted. It's been a pleasure.
It was a pleasure.
I'll say for anyone listening, if you love conversations like this with Maryam, let us know on social media. We love to hear about the type of guests you want. I know we default to a lot of engineering leaders, but we also love these kind of deep dives with leaders who are maybe from a non-traditional for our show background. And so we'd love to hear from you. Is this the type of thing you want to hear? And you'll see more of us on our Substack at Dev Interrupted. Thank you so much, Maryam.
Thanks, Connor.